Hey, it's Netta, and I'm so excited to tell you that my brand new book, Break Free from Sugar Cravings, is available now on Amazon. If you're struggling with sugar cravings and emotional eating, and you want step-by-step guidance to know exactly what to do so that you can feel confident around food again, go buy my book. Look for Break Free from Sugar Cravings on Amazon in most countries. Welcome to the Life After Sugar podcast. The podcast that's not just about sugar, but about your relationship with it and also with food and especially with yourself. So if you want to discover your life after sugar and hear inspiring stories from all kinds of people who also cut out sugar in their way, at their pace, for their own reasons, this is the podcast for you. Because when you take away the sugar, you can finally discover the real sweetness in your life. I'm your host, Netta Gorman. And today I'm talking with Monica, a naturopath from Australia who specializes in helping mums with Hashimoto's feel like themselves again. Now, you might be wondering what Hashimoto's is and what it has to do with sugar. Well, Hashimoto's is an autoimmune condition, and the symptoms, exhaustion, unexplained weight gain, feeling the cold, just not feeling right, can go on for years before anyone connects the dots. And sugar has a role to play in Hashimoto's. So we'll get to my chat with Monica in just a minute. But first, I just wanted to tell you that if you're looking for some free resources, then I have plenty for you. First, download my 5 tips to get rid of cravings. And those 5 tips may not be what you think they are. So go to sugarcravingsfree.com and download your 5 tips today. And while you're at sugarcravingsfree.com, why not take the cravings quiz? I created this cravings quiz specifically to help you start thinking more deeply about what triggers your cravings. And when you do this quiz, you'll get your personalized score as well as my practical tips to help you take your first step to get rid of cravings. Those free resources are at sugarcravingsfree.com. And on social media, come check out the Life After Sugar Facebook page and subscribe to the Life After Sugar YouTube channel, as well as my Instagram account at My Life After Sugar, which is where you'll get all kinds of inspiration so that you can see that it's perfectly possible to live a happy and active life, even if you don't eat sugar. All right, let's get to my chat with Monica. All right, so I'm here with Monica, who's in Australia. Monica, can you tell us a little bit about your background, how you grew up, where you grew up, and what you used to eat when you were a child?
Yeah, okay. So I grew up in Australia in the 80s, and I was actually really lucky to have very health conscious parents. So my mum was always cooking me whole foods, and we didn't have any junk food in the house. Although, mind you, it was the 80s, so fruit juice and muesli bars were considered to be health foods back then, in our family at least. So there was some sugar, and it was a balanced approach. Mum did give us the ice cream every now and then, and if we stopped at the service station, the petrol station, with my dad, he'd get us an ice cream and that sort of thing. So it wasn't completely restrictive, but they did really drum it into our heads that junk food was bad. And they told us that Coke tasted like muddy water, which we
Coke?
believe. Coca-Cola, yeah. So, if someone drank some Coca-Cola in front of me, I'd think, oh, that's disgusting. Why do you want to drink that? And I do remember there was a bit of shame around me having a bit of a sweet tooth and wanting to have sweets. I remember being at the fuel station once with my dad, and I saw all this sugar there, and I really, really wanted something. And I was so ashamed, but I plucked up the courage. And I just remember saying to Dad, Dad, can I have some yucky junk food? So
Mm.
I was actually quite embarrassed about it, but I know that my dad did actually loosen up a bit with his second batch of kids that he had in his second marriage. Um, and he told me a funny story about once when he took them on a holiday without their mum when they were quite young. And he was a bit nervous about how they were going to go on this holiday without their mum. So he said, "You can have all the lollies that you want." And they called it the Lolla Day. And still to this day, they refer to this holiday as the Lolla Day, which I
Oh,
thought was really
that's
hilarious.
lovely. Yeah,
Yeah. But
great.
yeah, it wasn't until I grew into young adulthood that sugar kind of crept into my life. It was more available in the high school canteen, and I went a little bit ballistic on it and ended up having a bit of a sweet tooth. And as a young adult, when I was working really hard and working a really stressful job, ironically working for health companies.
Mm.
But sugar crept in with the quick fixes, the quick sort of pick me ups and trying to just grab something quick to eat. And it did make a pretty big appearance in my life in the fermented liquid form. So there was a bit of alcohol intake on the weekends. And I think that lifestyle that I lived where I thought I could supplement my way out of a terrible lifestyle, which
Mm.
turns out not to be the case. I think that was a really big part of what created the perfect storm that contributed to the Hashimoto's that I developed. And then, led into that subsequent career choice of helping other mums, because I was diagnosed as a mum, uh, other mums to improve their Hashimoto's so that they can, feel like themselves again.
Oh, that's lovely. Yeah, and can you explain to us what Hashimoto's is?
Yeah, okay. So Hashimoto's is an autoimmune condition. So a lot of people think it's a thyroid condition. The thyroid is a butterfly-shaped gland in the base of your neck, and it produces hormones that really govern your metabolism. They're involved in governing the metabolism in every cell of the body. So it's not just your metabolism when it comes to, burning fat, but your energy and when your thyroid hormone is low. So Hashimoto's, just to take a step back there, it's an autoimmune condition. Your immune system attacks your thyroid and it gets a bit confused. And
Mm.
instead of attacking infections, it's attacking your thyroid. So then you end up with, in the case of Hashimoto's, low thyroid hormones, and it slows down everything in your body. So you can get really fatigued, you can get low mood, your metabolism tends to slow down quite commonly. It slows down your digestive tract, so quite often people end up with constipation,
Mhm.
and you know, there's a whole lot of weird random symptoms that can come along with that as well. So aches and pains, you can get pins and needles in your hands, when you lay on your side and you end up getting a numb arm.
Mhm.
That can be part of Hashimoto's. And a strange one is the outer third of your eyebrow. You can start to lose that. It becomes really thin. So that can be one of the little signs. A lot of people will actually also have some puffy eyelids and,
Uh-huh.
they'll feel the cold. There's a lot of different things that
Wow.
little symptoms that you might think are just general life, but they can be Hashimoto's
And how do they
or
find
low
that
thyroid.
somebody would have it?
How they find it? Oh, well, that's the other thing. Is that quite often in screening, and I think it's probably the same where you are in Australia. I know that it's a pretty normal thing for doctors to screen for the thyroid stimulating hormone or TSH.
Mhm.
And that is not a thyroid hormone. It's actually your brain. So it's from the pituitary gland, and it's your pituitary gland trying to crack the whip on your thyroid when the thyroid's not doing its job adequately. The problem with that being the first thing that's tested is that your immune system, by the time you actually have a TSH that has crept up enough to diagnose you with hypothyroid or hypothyroidism, by the time that's happened, your immune system's been attacking your thyroid for probably about the last 10 years.
What?
So Yeah, and so the beginnings of that condition started a long time ago, and quite often there's been a whole lot of suffering in that time before you actually get a diagnosis.
And quite a lot of the symptoms that you mentioned earlier.
Yes.
Hmm. And
Yeah,
so,
and I mean, sorry.
no, carry on.
I was going to say, in the labs in Australia, at least, I mean, it can vary from lab to lab, but a TSH, so as your thyroid goes down, your thyroid stimulating hormone goes up. And as it creeps up over about four, that can sort of creep into hypothyroid territory. Um, the thing is, after it gets to about two, between two and four, then you can quite often be experiencing the symptoms, and that's a long period of time as it creeps up until you get an actual diagnosis.
Okay. And because this is the Life After Sugar podcast, what's the connection, if there is one, between Hashimoto's autoimmune system attacking thyroid, for example, and sugar?
Yeah, so there's a lot of different angles that the sugar where the sugar comes in. So one of them is the microbiome. So when we have too much sugar as a part of the typical Western diet, we're feeding our bad bacteria in the gut and potentially displacing nutrients and displacing not having enough fiber and that sort of thing, which feed you good bacteria. So we can end up with an imbalance in your microbiome. So too much of the wrong sort of bacteria, not enough of the good bacteria. The bad bacteria tend to produce some pretty toxic inflammatory substances that can damage the gut wall and make it a bit more permeable or leaky. And leaky gut is, I guess, a known thing. The technical term is increased intestinal permeability when we have the gaps between the cells lining the gut are open. Then they're meant to open and close naturally, but they're open too much. And
Mhm.
things can get through into the bloodstream that shouldn't get through, including these inflammatory molecules that come from the bad bacteria. So, what happens is that now we've got the damaged gut wall and we've got these inflammatory molecules from that bad bacteria. They're called lipopolysaccharides, if you want to know, but we don't need to go there. And once that gets into the bloodstream, it creates a lot of inflammation. So your immune system thinks it goes onto high alert. It's like there's a big infection here. We need to attack. Let's go and attack. And it sort of gets into this point where it's more inflamed. And with Hashimoto's, it's not just one thing. There's a lot of different underlying factors, a lot of different things that come together to create the perfect storm. But this is one of those things that gets it into that mode of attack. And if you have also some additional triggers, then that can trigger your immune system to attack your thyroid.
Okay. Wow.
So there's a lot of other ways that sugars help as well. Should I go into that?
That sugar helps or sugar harms?
Sorry, helps to create that perfect storm.
Yeah, tell
Harms.
us. Yeah, tell us how sugar creates that perfect storm that leads
Yeah,
to Hashimoto's.
yeah. Well, inflammation is another thing. So sugar does, I mean, that's part of that inflammatory process as well. But sugar itself can contribute to inflammation. And when we have imbalances in our blood glucose levels, so if our sugar goes up, then that's creating inflammation. You know, if you get the blood sugar spikes, inflammation and oxidative stress that damage your cells. And then you've got the crashes. So, you have, if you have, as you know, if you have sweet foods on an empty stomach, then you have that high blood glucose, you get the spike, and then insulin kicks in, which is the hormone that gets that sugar into the cells. But then we often have an overreaction with that insulin and we have a crash afterwards. And when we have that blood glucose crash, our body says, oh no, we need to get this blood glucose back up again. So then it produces stress hormones in order to get the blood glucose back up.
Hmm.
So those stress hormones also contribute to that perfect storm that causes the immune system to attack the thyroid. And then you've got another thing, which I find really interesting. If that's all not enough, insulin resistance. So when someone, you've probably explained this before on your podcast, but insulin resistance, when we have too much sugar constantly and our body is no longer responding to that insulin adequately, that state of high sugar actually affects the receptors on the cells, the thyroid hormone receptors. So a receptor being something that it's like the site at the cell that allows the thyroid hormone into the cell.
Hmm.
Those receptors are affected by insulin resistance. So even if you have adequate amounts of thyroid hormone in your body, if your sugar is too high, you can't get that hormone into your cells
Hmm.
for that thyroid hormone to work effectively. And that's one of the reasons why people can be on their thyroid hormone medication but still have symptoms. So it's great. It's really important to be replacing that. I mean, yeah, it's important to be replacing that thyroid hormone if you're not producing it adequately, but we do need to address other factors to get it into the cells, also to convert that thyroid hormone into the active form.
Hmm.
So that's where that dietary treatment or dietary modifications can help significantly. And improving blood glucose balance is one of the first steps that we take when we're supporting someone with their lifestyle through Hashimoto's.
I want to take a quick break to say that if this is your first time here, then welcome and thank you for listening to this podcast. And whether you're new or a regular and you haven't yet rated or reviewed this podcast, could I ask you to scroll down and tap on the stars to rate this podcast and also to write a short review to let me know how this podcast is helping you in your life after sugar. I love reading your reviews, and when you rate and review this podcast, not only does it encourage me to continue making new episodes, but it also helps to share this podcast and have more people see it so that we can help more people feel better and lose weight with less sugar. So again, thank you for rating and reviewing this podcast and for spreading the word about sugar. And so, if I understand right, just cutting sugar is not necessarily enough for your thyroid.
That's right. Yeah. So we do want to make sure that the blood glucose levels are balanced. And I mean, people with Hashimoto's, I know that intermittent fasting is often recommended to help with blood glucose levels, but someone with Hashimoto's who has a bit of an irregular blood glucose and needs to really balance that out. In a lot of cases, I actually do still get them to have, a nice balanced protein, carbohydrate, fat breakfast. Within an hour of waking up as a part of the way that I like to help to start balancing out the blood glucose levels. Intermittent fasting I find to be really great for people who have already done a lot with their balance of their blood glucose, and that's kind of a down the track thing. What was the
Yeah.
question?
So, because you were talking about gut health just earlier. So I know what helped me a lot, and again, we're
Mm,
all bio individuals, but what helped me a lot was to introduce fermented foods and drinks into my diet
yeah.
to help with my gut health because I was suffering from chronic constipation.
Mm,
So for me, the secret formula was cut sugar and also I cut flour grains and
yeah.
introduce fermented foods and drinks. But
Mm.
obviously, that's not the recipe for everyone.
Yeah, I know. I mean, yeah, definitely. I think it is a really big part of what I do. So yeah, decreasing the sugar, making sure the blood glucose level is balanced throughout the day, and working on the gut microbiome, or the balance of good bacteria to bad bacteria and other microbes. That is a really important part of it. And yeah, I definitely like to bring in those fermented foods and that sort of thing. Sometimes, interestingly, if there's a bit of an issue with histamine,
Mm.
sometimes the fermented foods can make that a bit worse. So we need to improve that microbiome a bit first before we bring them in.
Hmm.
But definitely, that's such an important part. The gut health is really fundamental to helping to improve the immune balance and just the thyroid health in general. So that's a big part of what we do. And generally with Hashimoto's, we work on the other drivers. Yeah. So that you asked about, I guess, what else, and cutting sugar is not enough. Definitely, we want to work on a range of different drivers. So if there's any other hormonal imbalance that's happening, uh, there's, sex hormones can be involved. The insulin is, a metabolism hormone. So we want to work on the hormonal balance. Um, Often, so really the perfect storm, I've categorized them into, there's so many different things that contribute, so many different drivers, and I've put it into three main categories. So compromised gut and nutrition, which we've spoken a lot about, an inflammatory trigger, and hormonal shifts and imbalances. So, yeah, we've covered the gut. We've talked about the insulin being one of the hormones. There's the sex hormones as well. Uh, so, quite often, Hashimoto's is triggered during times of hormonal shift. So, it's usually when someone becomes pregnant, or when they become mum. Also, perimenopause and menopause are big times when we see an increase in Hashimoto's developing. And you've also got the other inflammatory triggers. So if you have an infection, then the immune system is triggered to go into that high alert mode. So if you've already got that underlying inflammation going on and the gut's compromised and you've got some other driving factors, then that can be the trigger that happens. And quite often I do see, when I'm looking at people's timelines and try to do the detective work on their driving factors, quite often they've gone overseas and they've had a gut bug and they've come back and never been the same since.
Mm.
Other inflammatory triggers can be toxins. So heavy metals tend to be a big driving factor with people. And interestingly, when you're going through perimenopause or menopause, you know how bone density can start to decrease in that
Yes.
time. So all of us who grew up in the 80s, 90s and before, we were exposed to the leaded fuel and the lead in our paints. If we were doing renovations on a house and removing paint, there's that lead. Uh, when we have too much heavy metals in our system that our body can't quite deal with right now, it'll store it in places like the bone. So when we start to go through perimenopause and menopause, the bone density can decrease. And that's when we start to release some of that lead.
Mm.
So those heavy metals can be a part of that sort of trigger, that inflammatory trigger that's going on.
Uh-huh.
That's something that I actually learned from Lara Briden. I don't know if you are familiar with Dr. Lara Briden. She
No.
has some really great information when it comes to perimenopause and menopause.
Well, that's
She's,
interesting for me personally, because that's where I am in my life, but also for a lot of
yeah,
my listeners who, are in the second half of their life.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, that's another, the toxins, the heavy metals, any sort of toxic exposure. The thyroid hormone is a bit like, sorry, the thyroid itself is a little bit like the canary in the gold mine. You know how
Mm.
they used to take the canary down to the gold mine. So if you're exposed to a lot of toxins, sometimes it's your thyroid
Huh.
that can be affected first
Uh-huh.
out of your body. And then you've also got things like lack of sleep. That's really very inflammatory. And, we need sleep, obviously, for repairing during the night. Often I find as well, exercise imbalance can be an issue. So, not enough exercise is inflammatory, but too much can also be quite depleting and contribute. So, I think I might have covered a lot of the different driving factors anyway. That
Yeah.
so when we're looking to treat Hashimoto's, or when as a naturopath, I'm looking to support someone through their Hashimoto's. Uh, in addition to them having their thyroid hormone replacement, we need to address some other things. So we need to address all those driving factors that we talked about, get that immune system to realize that it's safe and that it doesn't need to be in attack mode,
Hmm.
calm the immune system. And we also want to help support that conversion of the thyroid hormone into the active form.
Mm.
And that's going to take certain nutrients like your selenium and your zinc, for example, as well as making sure that it's getting into the cells. So there's a lot of different steps along the way to
Yeah.
get that thyroid working better. And even if you have good levels of thyroid hormone in your blood and your thyroid hormone tests are fine, if you've got symptoms like that fatigue, the weight gain or stubborn weight, the low mood, the aches and pains, sensitivity to cold. I mean, I'm going through menopause myself, and I've I've noticed that, the sensitive to cold of Hashimoto's and then also the hot flushes. So,
Oh,
there's you've got to have all the layers.
oh, you lucky woman.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of different areas to address when we're
Yeah.
addressing Hashimoto's, and
I
sugar's
mean,
a big part of it.
yeah, and sugar's a big part of most, I've found, most conditions. Can't a person just pop a pill and get it over with?
The actual, are we talking about the Hashimoto's or the blood sugar
Yeah,
imbalance?
isn't there like a pill to treat Hashimoto's and then you just carry on eating as before?
Yeah, well, that'd be nice, but yeah, I guess the way that we got into the Hashimoto's is not the way we if we don't address that, we're not getting back out of it. So,
Mm.
yeah, I mean, definitely the popping of the pill is considered to be a very important part. If you're not producing that thyroid hormone, you do need to somehow get it, and thyroid hormone replacement is really important. But yeah, that holistic side of things, we need to get that thyroid hormone working in your body.
Yeah, it's not
But
enough
yeah,
just
I'd
to
love it.
swallow it in pill form. You actually, the body has to be able to use it.
Yeah, that's right.
Mm.
Hmm.
Wow, that's fascinating. Gosh, I only heard of Hashimoto's a few years ago, and I didn't realize just how prevalent it is. Is it mostly women, or is it as many women as men that seem to have that kind of autoimmune condition?
It is mostly women, and part of the reason for that, I mean, there's a few reasons. The hormonal side of things. So we go through a lot of different, cycles through the month, and we've got our puberty, the pregnancy, menopause, perimenopause. So there's a hormonal aspect to those triggers. Those hormonal shifts make a big difference. Also, if you think about toxins, and I can't remember how many. There was a book that I read once. I used to quote it a lot, but it's been a while now. Uh, but it said that it was something about there was a rubber duck on the front. Anyway, that's not helpful. But this book stated that the average woman, before she even leaves the house, has slapped on, I think it was something like a hundred and something different chemicals onto her hair, face, and body, because where I mean, you've got your different. I mean, I use a lot of natural things. I'm sure you do as well. Uh, all of your cleansers, your different cosmetics, the makeup that you're using, the perfume. There's so many different things that we're putting onto our face and body. And, our face is pretty close to the thyroid.
Mm.
So those extra toxins that a female is exposed to could possibly be involved as well.
Yeah. Wow. Gosh.
Yeah. No, it
So
is very absolutely more common in females than males.
in women, yeah, I thought so. And so if you had one piece of advice to give someone to do whatever they can to look after their bodies and I can't say prevent Hashimoto's, but at least like lower the risk, what would that advice be for them?
Well, I mean, yeah, just looking after yourself, caring about yourself as though you were your own best friend
Mm,
is a start. We do quite often push ourselves to the limits in our work and in our life. And I knew I was doing the wrong thing uh, back in my 20s and 30s, but I pushed through. And now I realize it was probably not the best idea. Uh, so I guess that's my one piece of advice is treat your own body the way that you would treat your best friend.
mm. I love
And
that.
yeah, and that treatment, balancing your blood sugar level goes a long way, not just with your blood sugar, but your gut microbiome, the health of your gut. And the health of your gut is really fundamental to your immune health. So
Yeah.
not just Hashimoto's, but any autoimmune condition. Also for even if you don't have a condition, just your immune system fighting off colds and flus and other viruses on a seasonal basis, we need to look after our gut. You just never know what's around the corner, do you?
Exactly. Yeah, 100%. Oh, thank you so much, Monica, for just demystifying what Hashimoto's is and the relationship between that autoimmune condition and sugar.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, Netta. I've really enjoyed having a chat with you. It's been
Me
fun.
too. Thank
And
you.
yeah, I love your podcast, love your work. Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much for spreading the word.
You're welcome. Thank you. Gosh, what really struck me in my conversation with Monica is just how many women are walking around with Hashimoto's for years without even knowing it, and how much of it comes back to what we're eating, and specifically to sugar. And what Monica was talking about is exactly the same as what I talk about on this podcast, and especially as what I teach in my Freedom from Cravings Formula program, which is to take a closer look at your relationship with food, especially with sugar, and especially your relationship with yourself. And sometimes this is really difficult to do on your own, which is exactly why the guidance and support and accountability you get in my Freedom from Cravings Formula program is so important. Because I created this program specifically for women over 50 to help you go deeper into your relationship with food, especially sugar, and also into your relationship with yourself. And so that you can get guidance and support to help you stop emotional eating, break free from sugar cravings, slim down, and feel more in control around food, and more empowered to know about your own body and your own health. In the program, you'll get step-by-step guidance and customized support through the 5-step formula that I've developed so that you can live your life with more energy and fit into your favorite clothes effortlessly, feel confident in your food choices, and ditch the shame and embarrassment that you feel every time your emotions make you slip or fall off the wagon, and so that you never have to feel like you're on some kind of restrictive diet. By the time you're 50 and over, you've spent decades looking after everybody else. And now it's your turn to take care of yourself. So let's chat about your specific needs and why you want to break free from cravings. So go to sugarcravingsfree.com or click on the link in the show notes to book a free video chat with me today. That's it for this week. Keep in touch and see you soon for another episode.